Joining us now in the studio is Mick Jackson from WildHearts. Welcome.
Hi.
Tell me a bit about what WildHearts do.
WildHearts, we launch companies and we use the profits to address economic injustice. So we're in 16 countries just now. We fund microfinance for women around the world.
For women specifically?
But 95% of our customers are women. Women have been shown repeatedly, if you invest in a woman in a developing world, the education rates go up amongst the kids, the nutrition rates, the women start voting, and basically it creates a little ripple effect, a mini social revolution, if you will. So the best people to lend to are the women, and you get your money back. Seriously.
Fantastic. And off the back of all of this, you've now launched another new project called Micro-Tyco.
That's it.
Sounds like a kid's product, but it clearly isn't.
Micro-Tyco is designed to get to the real core of the emotional components of enterprise. There's a lot of people focus on the externals, the trappings of it, but as everyone in the exchange knows, it's the emotional components that separate those who do and don't. We took the inspiration from a woman called Hawa in Ghana who has polio, disabled, illiterate, friendless, beggar, and you could add black African women to that as well. She got a loan for £97 from us. She's now the leading spice retailer in the whole market, and she's got the women go to her for advice. So when I asked her why she set her stall up, she looked at me and said, I cycled around the market and identified the gap. She did not see anything in her life as a barrier, and she has the spirit that our grandparents had and that our culture's completely lost. So I thought, right, if we have emotional poverty in this country, we've got material poverty in the developing world, just throwing money at the issue here is not going to make any difference. You've got to start with people's self-perception. So we said, let's invest seed capital, but the seed is £1, and it's designed to bring what's in you alive. We piloted it last year, and 5 10-year-old girls turned their pound into over £4,000. And the applied stuff that I didn't learn in business school, I had to learn from my peers. These kids were doing leverage, adding value, harnessing their network instinctively. So this year, it's grown from 60 kids teams last year to 3,000 people are doing it as we speak. 2 universities have already made it a part of their business degree, and we've got big corporates going in for it. But the thing for the big corporates is they're terrified they're going to get beat by brownies.
So is this specifically for children or students?
No, it's for it's designed to reignite the spirit of enterprise in our culture. So one of the sociological issues is much wider than just the monetary thing. Is to tackle the sense of disconnection in our culture, depression, people feeling that what they do doesn't matter. The fact that we're producing graduates in business school that are like Sparkies that can't wire a plug, that it's not fit for purpose, and our companies could be raising their game as well. So we bring everybody together so that people stop reducing each other to cliches. They're all competing against the kids against the kids, the corporates against the corporates. But in the back of the corporate's mind is, what if they get beat by the kids? And by bringing them together, it makes little kids in housing estates realise that Deloitte or Enterprise Rent-A-Car are actually really decent people, but the media will portray them as, you know, robber barons.
Monsters.
Exactly, which is profoundly naive.
Sorry.
It's okay.
But the adults...
It came too easy to you there.
The kids... Straight off they go. The kids help the adults get their mojo back.
Yeah.
The kids let the adults see, well, why am I thinking the same way? Have I become so risk averse? So we all inspire each other. And then the final key point is all the money, not a percentage of it, all the money created then goes immediately into microfinance. It is not a charity fundraiser. What it's designed to do is for anybody in our culture to say, I went beyond what was comfortable for me. I created wealth out of nothing, and now the whole world benefits. And I've got little boys in housing schemes that try to get through to young men is something which I feel is particularly difficult. Basically, utterly transforming, looking at your eye and saying, I'm a global ethical investor. Their dads have never worked, their grandfathers never worked, yet these young boys are now perceiving themselves as global players, and they're 10. And then they start getting the stories of all the people whose lives have changed, but it wasn't a handout. So the message then is, if you invested in their life and transformed it, how can you invest in your own? We have to tackle the factors which are destroying our culture, and speeches and big initiatives aren't going to do it. You go right to somebody, go, right, Smarty Pants, here's £1, see you in 4 weeks, and that cuts right to it.
Yeah.
So
that's the simplicity of it, really, that's been its success.
And you can tell I get really excited about it.
I want to go back to brownies. £4,000. That's good going. Ambitious plans there indeed, and a number of high-profile partners. One corporate partner and indeed sponsor of the Entrepreneur of the Year Awards is Deloitte, and Ian Steele joins us here tonight.
Good
Not
evening.
a monster, you're a lovely man, Ian.
Yes, you don't know me well enough, Carol. You're right the first time. Good evening. Micro-Tyco, why are we involved?
Well, yeah, well, pretty much, yeah. I don't know. I was going to ask that question, but I think it's probably quite obvious why you're involved.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people would be emotionally attracted to it. And some people would be more emotionally attracted than others. I first met Mick about a year ago, and about 11 months ago I heard the story about WildHearts, and it resonated with me particularly. A whole range of reasons. One was that the objective or the result of it was hopefully going to give people who had no role model, no ambition, and no idea what they were capable of a chance of establishing all of those things, getting a role model, finding out what they were capable of, and also working on a team. And I mean, my hometown's in North Ayrshire, and the unemployment rate I think is somewhere between 20 and 30%, and there is no big employer left up there. And therefore, if you are a pupil in a school in North Ayrshire, at best you'll think that my way to a fruitful job is somewhere else, and in fact it might not be somewhere else. And when you add that to the fact that peer pressure over the generations gets more and more difficult to deal with, so if you do have a level of ambition, and if you do have a desire to, for want of a better expression, better yourself, you're often put down for that. So Micro-Tyco, through working in teams, through an inspirational story that gives people a tangible result of what they're trying to do, works for me. And I think it works for me in we help with the proceeds raised during the month of November, but also in terms of the emotional uplift you give to people. I've said somewhere else it's like lifting a veil from them, because they don't really know what they're capable of until somebody shows them a way to establish what they're capable of, and too many people don't have that. So it's good to be involved in it, but I think that the only way that this sounds too grand and I'm not bright enough to get this right, but if society is going to improve and more people are going to be okay in terms of an ability to look after themselves and each other, it's through something like this rather than just about anything else I can think of. That's why I wanted to be involved.
He's also playing down how amazing Deloitte have been. The team, they're creative. I mean, we've had senior auditors selling toasties and polishing shoes and stuff like that. I mean, the Deloitte team have been incredible.
And it's not because the brownies are at the back of our mind, or the primary schools at the back of our mind. They're right at the front of our mind.
You don't want to be beaten by them.
But also, it's quite healthy for those of you who might be watching this to realise that I've got an Edinburgh-Glasgow thing going between the two offices as well. That's probably multiplied the amount of money we'll be able to get out of this.
Who's winning? Dare I ask?
Oh, don't know what's about.
If it's not Glasgow, I'll be saying it's Glasgow anyway.
Fantastic. And I guess it's really important though for you guys to, especially Deloitte, this relationship with Micro-Tyco, to find the next generation of entrepreneurs in Scotland.
What I've noticed is that, you know, I was really fortunate. My parents worked their guts out and I had a really nice upbringing, but I had to learn to be streetwise after I graduated, you know, and being streetwise and setbacks in life, as long as they're not too extreme, are one of the key psychological components of developing resilience in a person, in somebody. A lot of these wee kids don't realise that they are utterly brilliant, but they have written themselves off, and they've set an aspiration of here. And the wonderful thing about the large corporates that are going in for it, and it is designed as corporate training. It's not a charity event. It is the best business training they can get. You combine that with maybe some kids that have gone to a really good school or at university. Everybody gets to start interacting with each other. So if you imagine you're some student, you're saying, oh, I could never have applied for Deloitte. People will actually know them now. And it demystifies the whole idea that you go, oh, I couldn't do it, or I couldn't be an entrepreneur. You go, yes, you could. You held your own against the world's greatest. Because there's a thing called, I call it the Trinity of Influence. Right? You need to have a role model. But Tom Hunter's one of my role models. He is now being videoed on camera, given his best business advice, as is Bob Keeler, as is Young Entrepreneur of the Year for New York. So you get a video that you can say, wow, and they give you their best advice. But if you've only got that, you then may say, well, it's okay for Tom, or it's okay for Brandon in New York, or Therese Rain, the ex-First Lady of Australia. You then have mentors, like someone who's maybe close to your age from the same town who works at Deloitte or whatever, but then you've got the other people your age, whether you're 40 or 15, and you don't want to get beaten by them because you can relate to them. If they can do it, why can't you do it? So you're keeping each other sharp. You've got a mentor to teach you the tips, and you've got a role model to go for. And we have to push back against the negative influences in the media. I mean, it's just trash. the values that are being promoted, the role models that are being set up, and the excuses that people are being sold. And we can reverse that, but we have to do it ourselves. Because our culture is crammed with brilliant role models. They just don't get celebrated. They're all around us. And that's what it does.
Speak about it though, everyone's going to jump on board because he's an incredibly motivational speaker.
Wow.
So you're going to get a wee pound next year, Carol?
What would you do with a pound?
Give you a pound.
What would you do with a pound?
I'll give it to Mick.
I'd give it to, that's what Tom did.
Let him give it to
We said to Tom,
give it to the wrong 10-year-old.
Tom Hunter says, what would you do with your pound? He said, I'd invest in those kids. And he's going, right, like straight away. He said, surround yourself by brilliant people. I'd invest in those kids. So even that little school found out. Now, let me put it in perspective. That little school in East Kilbride that did it, there's a heroin problem in the doorstep. It was boys that were murdered with a samurai sword outside. And that was not the East Kilbride that I grew up in. When I said to Tom on camera, what would you do with your pound? He said, I'd give it to that little school. See, when those kids found out that Scotland's first self-made billionaire, without trying to be funny, said he would invest in them, you could not believe the effect that had on them. And they can't rationalise it away. So that ripples out.
Amazing.
Very impressive.
You could do something easy. You just go and do a beauty session with Carol Sidetrack. You could turn your pound into
He's off.
This is one of the things. Therese Rain, who was introduced to us through Deloitte, who is incredible. She was the First Lady of Australia once removed. She's also an incredibly successful businesswoman, but she's a psychologist. And she said, you don't just have a pound. You've got your know-how, your network, your talents. Everyone's obsessed with what they've got externally. They don't realise what they've got
internally.
and they're carrying it around with them. And if you can turn that into wealth, you can do anything.
Oh, I'm totally convinced. Fantastic.
Seriously. I'll send you an email. I'll give you my card.
Thank you for coming along.
Is that okay?
Absolutely fine.
You two are great. Thank you very much.
So, the clock is ticking. Who will the new tycoons be? Watch this space, but for now, back to the awards dinner.